Jasmine is a woman. You move so gracefully, poetry in motion. Your qualities define your soul. Find sympathies, finished and whole.
When I overheard my mother talking with Gerald, planning her divorce, her 5th divorce, my biggest fear was that she would finally decide to marry Gerald himself. I felt more alone than ever. Sarah wasn't an option. The last time that I spoke with her, she vomited in fear. I sat down and wrote a letter to Aunt Wraith, if only she would invite us to visit her. But that was selfish. Mum wouldn't allow us to take Misty and Melody with us. We couldn't leave them with Mom, with Gerald. I put the letter in my diary, and I didn't send it. I used to feel guilty after we did go to Aunt Wraith for good, but I've had time to reconcile my feelings and understand them. It was for all of us the pathway to happiness to go to Estolia and live with Aunt Wraith and Uncle Gregorio. Angelica Aguirre McIntosh, inscrito.
Jasmine, I feel compelled to also share my thoughts about you as a woman. Your movements are graceful, poetic even. Your bone structure is classic. You will be beautiful even when you are 80 years old. You, my dear, also have an exquisite body. I am certain that most men who have known you in your adult life have fantasized about what it would be like to have all of your attention centered on them, to feel your body enveloping them, to hear you calling out in pleasure.
She stood up abruptly. His words had brought a rush of heat to her core. 6 weeks ago, he warned her off, and yet, now, he was openly seducing her. She did not think she had the emotional strength to just jump casually into bed with her employer, which was what he seemed to be suggesting. But she was tempted. He stood up, too, and said,
I recognize that this is an alarming topic of conversation for you. Please, do not think that I mean to pounce on you. I would never do anything against your wishes.
He came around the table and stood in front of her. His next words almost seemed to be against his will.
Have you had erotic thoughts about me, Jasmine? Do you go to bed at night dreaming about my body joining with yours? Or am I alone in having these fantasies? I have come to desire you in a way I never thought possible, nor sought.
He put his hands on her shoulders and pulled her gently into his arms. As his mouth settled over hers, she closed her eyes and returned his kisses with abandon. It was only when she felt the hot prod of his desire pressing against her that she became aware of how heated their kisses had become. She pushed away from him, and he gave her some space. Her cheeks were flushed, and she stared at him.
I have shocked you,
he said.
Dominic,
she said, not even sure what she was going to tell him. She was confused by the swirl of emotions and desires rushing through her on top of the mixed messages he had given her.
I'm not interested in being your lover. No matter how attractive I find you, I know it would ultimately destroy me to become involved with you or any other man in a temporary relationship.
His response was swift. Forcefully, he said,
Jasmine, I do not want a lover. I want you to be my wife.
He moved away from her, pacing to the far wall before turning to come back to her, agitated, no longer the sophisticated European she was used to working with. Now he seemed more a man with deep insecurities.
Jasmine, I intended to live my life celibate rather than give in to the dictates of the religion I grew up knowing.
He sounded angry, half growling the words.
I did not believe it was right for me. I planned to hide myself away here in my underground home until it was too late.
He looked at her and said,
I have watched you and wanted you since the minute I met you. I have tried to reject everything you and your purity represent in my culture and religion, but I cannot do it.
He sounded more than insecure. He sounded tormented.
I don't understand, Dominic.
Of course you do not understand.
Spell it out then, so I will.
She demanded. He took a deep breath, regaining some of his equilibrium. He paused and then shook his head.
How does one explain succinctly the core tenets of one's faith?
He took her hand to lead her out of the study and into the living room. Once she was seated in one of the chairs, he settled in another facing her. He explained.
I am Estolian, and a direct male descendant of the firstborn son of Zacharias, the founder of my religion as well as my nation. Estolians believe the greatest marital blessing comes from consummating a marriage just prior to the wedding. Once consummated, a man must marry the woman whose purity he has taken. She has given him something of immeasurable value, and he yields his soul up into her keeping, so she will have something of equal value. A man must do this in his 30th year of age. Once I met you, my decision to reject the blessings and burdens of my faith was at risk. You have tempted me from the moment I saw you. Then today, I was lost because I saw the substance of your soul, your aura. Once I realized there was no way to avoid my destiny, I tried to determine how I could go about making you mine.
He paused.
I'm not even very good at that. I cannot just seduce you and expect you to happily share the rest of your life with me. My cousins do this routinely. It always works out for them somehow, but I still do not think I can just presume to do this thing.
What was he babbling about?
Dominic, back up a minute. Let's just take it one step at a time. Today is your 30th birthday?
He laughed and nodded, one lock of silver blonde hair falling over his forehead. He looked boyish and young and carefree.
Yes. Most children born with platinum hair lose the color between the age of 2 and 5. Many of my cousins began life with this color hair but grew out of it, and went on to have dark hair. For whatever reason, I never lost the color associated with great youth or great age.
And you have a religion that says you must marry at the age of 30?
She pressed on. His expression grew solemn.
Yes, Jasmine, that or live my life in celibacy. In our faith, men do not marry after they turn 31. From that time on, if they are unmarried, they are doomed to live in celibate solitude, having spurned the greatest of all blessings, to have their wife keep their soul.
He frowned.
Until now, I was prepared to do just that, to live my life without the warmth of female companionship.
His expression was brooding as he looked at her. Persisting, she asked.
You believe I'm...
She paused, unsure what he believed.
For some, not all certainly, but for some it is given to them to see the aura of the woman who is their perfect soulmate, their only soulmate. When I woke this morning and saw your aura, it told me you are the only woman on earth who can keep my soul safe.
He looked at her with torment in his eyes.
It is, I do not know how to explain, typical among my cousins. If they see the aura of a woman, they will seduce her. Some of my relatives will go so far as to abduct the woman they know is their Kaylee, the keeper of their soul. I never thought this was acceptable, and because of this, I chose to absent myself from my faith and my country.
His eyes dropped to focus on her lips, and he continued almost as if he was in a trance.
Now I am beginning to understand why they are so uniformly willing to seduce, even abduct the woman they have been led to. It is a compulsion.
These finished and whole. Your body exquisite, inspiring fantasies in each man who sees you looking his way.